a single strand of copper can eradicate mold forever. So why has this fundamental science been heavily guarded? Right now, you can walk into any local hardware store and purchase a piece of copper wire for under $5. If you place it next to a damp, vulnerable surface, it doesn't just eliminate every strain of mold it touches, it prevents it from ever growing back. We aren't talking about a temporary fix that lasts a few weeks or a couple of months. It is absolute and permanent. The Environmental Protection Agency actually verified this. The EPA officially listed copper as the very first solid surface material ever to carry legitimate, certified public health claims for its antimicrobial power. Out of their incredibly strict testing parameters, 275 distinct copper blends passed with flying colors. Every single one of those alloys annihilated 99.9% of hazardous pathogens in under 2 hours of contact. Now compare that to stainless steel, the foundation of almost all contemporary architecture and hospital design. It destroyed absolutely nothing. 0%, even after 28 continuous days of testing. And this next fact is what should make you pause. This is not a modern breakthrough. It is not some cutting-edge discovery. It is a 4-millennium-old reality that has been meticulously and quietly erased by a massive sector that relies on you purchasing plastic bottles of chemicals until the end of time. This is the reality of the ultimate natural fungus destroyer on the planet, and exactly why a $2.2 billion market desperately hopes you never discover its secret. As we speak, 45 million structures in America harbor dangerously high levels of mold within their architecture. That terrifying statistic is drawn directly from peer-reviewed studies published by Fisk and Mudari in the journal Indoor Air. Those identical scientists uncovered that 21% of all asthma cases in the country stem straight from indoor dampness and mold contact. We are not talking about a runny nose or spring allergies. We are talking about the severe, life-altering asthma that forces children into emergency wards annually. Both the World Health Organization and the CDC validate these exact findings. Residing in a mold-infested space drastically spikes your chances of developing severe respiratory illness. And the true cure is not waiting for you in aisle 4 of the grocery store. It is hiding inside the walls of older buildings outfitted with copper plumbing. This basic metal has been waging war on mold your whole life, yet nobody bothered to mention its potential to protect everything else. But this cover-up is just the tip of the iceberg. Let's travel back to 1882, to the lush vineyards of Bordeaux, France. Pierre-Marie Alexis Millardet, a French botanist, is strolling through a dying agricultural estate. Since the 1870s, a devastating fungal outbreak known as downy mildew has been relentlessly ravaging the country's grapevines. The entire French wine sector is on the brink of total collapse, and farmers are entirely out of options. Millardet is studying the devastation when he halts in his tracks. He notices a bizarre anomaly. The grapevines bordering the edge of the road are perfectly vibrant, while every other plant in the valley is withering away, suffocated by a blanket of white rot. The ones hugging the street are lush, thriving, and completely untouched by the plague. He has to know why. The vineyard manager, Ernest David, clears up the mystery. He explains that they had been coating those specific outer rows with a crude paste of lime and copper sulfate. The goal had absolutely nothing to do with fighting the disease. They merely wanted to make the grapes look hideous and taste incredibly bitter to discourage thieves passing by on the road. Completely by accident, the copper had been slaughtering the fungal infection the entire time. Millardet devoted the following 3 years to conducting strict, controlled experiments at Chateau d'Auzac. By 1885, he published his results, declaring to the globe that he had engineered a true cure for the rot crippling his country. This concoction was dubbed the Bordeaux mixture. It immediately became the first commercial-scale fungicide ever utilized in human history. And this is a crucial detail omitted from nearly every agricultural textbook. The Bordeaux mixture was so remarkably effective that it didn't merely rescue French vineyards, it halted the devastating blight wiping out Irish potato fields. It protected massive banana plantations throughout Latin America and shielded fruit orchards across every single continent. A basic copper compound emerged as the single most critical defensive triumph ever recorded against fungal starvation. Fast forward 140 years, and global organic farmers still rely on it to this day. Yet, Millardet was far from the pioneer of understanding exactly what this metal does to fungus. Around 2400 BC, the ancient Egyptians officially recorded copper's sterilizing properties in a medical manuscript known as the Smith Papyrus. Over 4 millennia ago, they actively utilized it to sanitize their drinking water and heal festering wounds. In ancient Greece, the legendary physician Hippocrates instructed patients to drink copper-steeped water to treat severe lung ailments and stomach diseases. Persian kings transported their water reserves across arid desert expanses in massive copper urns to guarantee it remained pristine and safe. In India, Ayurvedic traditions have mandated storing water in copper containers for thousands of years, a daily habit still alive in countless households right now. The Romans constructed their massive aqueducts with it. They sheathed the bottoms of their naval ships in copper plates, and their doctors crafted surgical tools from it. Every single one of these distinct empires independently recognized the exact same truth over thousands of years. If you put copper in the vicinity of disease-causing organisms, those organisms perish. This wisdom was universal. It was entirely free, and nobody owned a patent on it. The underlying biology is where this narrative truly shifts gears. In 1893, a Swiss scientist named Carl Wilhelm von Nägeli officially labeled this reaction. He coined the term the oligodynamic effect. This defines the profound capacity of specific metallic ions, most notably copper, to obliterate living cells, even in microscopically small doses. Let that sink in for a second. You don't need heavy quantities. You don't need highly saturated chemical baths. Mere trace amounts of copper ions are completely fatal to viruses, bacteria, algae, fungi, and mold. Here is exactly what happens on a microscopic scale. When moisture touches a copper surface, it liberates copper ions. These ions hold a positive electrical charge, making them magnetically attracted to the negatively charged outer membranes of microorganisms like mold. The copper ions literally pierce the cell wall and flood the interior. Once inside, they create a highly reactive oxygen species known as superoxide. This substance is so deeply toxic that it violently tears apart the organism's DNA from the inside out. Simultaneously, the copper ions shut down the essential enzymes the cell requires to process food and multiply. The organism cannot fix the internal damage. It cannot breed. It simply dies. And here is the crucial biological distinction that elevates copper above every other sanitizing element known to humanity, including silver. Copper possesses two distinct oxidation states, and it infinitely cycles back and forth between them. This means it launches a synchronized assault from multiple biological angles all at once. Silver only has a single state. That is exactly why dangerous organisms can eventually mutate to survive silver, but they utterly fail to build an immunity against copper. Copper isn't just a single weapon. It's an entire armory firing at once from every conceivable flank, and it never quits. The ions continue to discharge as long as the physical metal is there. A copper barrier never runs empty. It doesn't have an expiration date. You don't have to recharge it, and you never have to throw it away. A solid chunk of pure copper will continuously execute mold for decades on end. There are historic copper roofs in Europe that have flawlessly blocked all organic growth for over half a century without a single second of upkeep or maintenance. Now, here is the moment where this reality steps out of the laboratory and directly into your modern life. In the 1960s, NASA faced a massive hurdle: purifying drinking water aboard the Apollo spacecraft. They absolutely could not rely on chlorine. It was far too heavy, dangerously volatile, and completely impractical inside a pressurized capsule hurtling through the vacuum of space. So, engineers at what is now the Johnson Space Center engineered a brilliant alternative. They built a system that electronically dispensed trace copper and silver ions directly into the water supply. There were no harsh chemicals, no fragile filters to swap out, no constant monitoring required. A tiny device, roughly the size of a deck of cards and weighing just 9 ounces, successfully sterilized the entire water supply for the Apollo missions, using nothing but copper and silver. That mechanism was so flawless that NASA eventually licensed it for everyday commercial application. Today, you will find copper and silver ionization systems purifying massive swimming pools, public fountains, dolphin habitats, and industrial cooling towers all over the globe. NASA definitively proved that copper could entirely replace the chemical water treatment industry in the harshest environment known to mankind. And yet, almost nobody is aware of this reality. But its power doesn't end with water. Take a look at any house featuring a copper cupola, a copper chimney cap, or a copper ridge vent. Look closely at the shingles sitting directly beneath that metal. They are completely immaculate. There is absolutely zero moss, zero algae, zero mold, and zero mildew. Now, look at the exact same roof just above or to the side of that copper fixture. It is inevitably stained with biological rot. Here is the secret. Every single time it rains, a microscopic fraction of that copper oxidizes. It dissolves seamlessly into the rainwater and washes down the slope of the roof. Those cascading ions form an impenetrable, invisible shield that completely blocks any living organism from taking root on the shingles below. Roofers have understood this trick for generations. In fact, top-tier asphalt shingles are now manufactured with microscopic copper granules baked right into the surface for this exact purpose. A basic strip of copper flashing tacked along the very peak of your roof will permanently block all moss, algae, and mold from growing on the entire slope beneath it for the absolute lifespan of the roof itself. The total price for that copper strip? Roughly $5 at any local hardware store. It is a one-time installation that guarantees decades of flawless protection. No repeated applications, no toxic chemical sprays, no recurring monthly bills. And this is precisely where the math becomes incredibly dangerous for the corporations selling you cleaning supplies. By 2025, the global market for mold inhibitors and household cleaners will hit $2.2 billion. That specific valuation is sourced directly from SNS Insider Market Research. The massive conglomerates profiting from that number include household names like Clorox, Procter & Gamble, SC Johnson, and dozens of others. Every single one of them peddles mold and mildew eradicators that rely heavily on synthetic, manufactured chemicals. Every single one of those plastic bottles will cost you somewhere between $8 and $40. And most importantly, every single one of those products is designed to run out, forcing you to buy it again and again and again. Here is the absolute truth that shatters their entire profit model. You cannot patent copper. It is legally impossible to own the exclusive rights to a fundamental element on the periodic table. You cannot manufacture a proprietary, trademarked version of a metal that is simply dug out of the earth. You cannot build a multi-billion-dollar subscription empire around a substance that works perfectly forever and never needs to be restocked. The survival of the modern cleaning industry relies entirely on your belief that their patented, branded chemical cocktails are the only way to conquer a mold infestation. Copper is the exact antithesis of everything their business model demands. It is incredibly cheap. It is universally available. It functions permanently, and it generates exactly zero recurring revenue for Wall Street. So, rather than telling you the truth, you were conditioned to grab a disposable plastic spray bottle. You were heavily marketed the lie that natural remedies are weak, primitive, and completely unreliable. You were convinced that true professionals only use harsh modern chemistry, not ancient metallic secrets. And that marketing campaign worked flawlessly. There are $2.2 billion of annual proof that it worked. But the most undeniable proof emerged in life or death scenarios. Back in 1852, during the terrifying cholera outbreaks that were rapidly wiping out tens of thousands of people across Europe, a French doctor named Victor Burke noticed something seemingly impossible. The men laboring in copper mines, foundries, and smelting facilities were surviving. Their death rates weren't just slightly lower than the general public, they were nearly non-existent. After 15 years of obsessive documentation, Burke formally presented his findings to the French scientific academies in 1867. While entire cities were being decimated by a microscopic killer, the copper workers were inexplicably shielded from the plague. Bring that reality directly into the modern era. Today, cutting-edge hospitals have finally started integrating solid copper surfaces right into their intensive care units. We are talking about copper bed rails, door handles, tray tables, and IV poles. The data, published in highly respected medical journals, is staggering. The rates of hospital-acquired infections plummeted in wards utilizing copper compared to standard stainless steel rooms. Even MRSA, the notorious deadly superbug that easily shrugs off nearly every modern antibiotic we have was completely eradicated on copper surfaces in just 75 minutes. On stainless steel, that exact same superbug survived indefinitely. The science isn't vague. It isn't up for debate. The EPA certified it. NASA relied on it. Hospitals proved it. And you can start using it in your own home today. For interior surfaces, simply dissolve 1 tablespoon of copper sulfate into a single gallon of warm water. You can pick up a bag of copper sulfate at any local garden center or hardware store for just a few bucks. Spray that mixture onto any area showing signs of mold or mildew and let it rest for exactly 1 hour. Those highly charged copper ions will drill down and obliterate the fungal structure at its very root. Wipe the area clean and let it air dry. The invisible residue of copper ions left behind will make that surface chemically impossible for mold to colonize for weeks on end. For exterior spaces like your wooden deck, concrete patio, walkways, or fencing, mix 1 to 2 ounces of copper sulfate per gallon of water. Apply it with a standard pump sprayer when the material is completely dry. Let the solution soak deeply into the porous wood or concrete. It will physically block all biological rot and algae for months. For your roof, as we discussed, simply tuck a strip of copper mesh or flashing under the ridge cap, leaving 2 to 3 inches exposed to the sky. Every single time it rains, the water will distribute copper ions down the slope, protecting the entire roof for the total lifetime of the house. It's a single installation that you never have to think about again. For your camping gear, tarps, and canvas tents, a quick wipe down with a heavily diluted copper solution before you pack them away ensures mold will never take hold in storage. Mildew simply cannot exist on a surface, carrying even a microscopic trace of this metal. This ancient wisdom didn't vanish because it stopped working. 4 millennia of continuous application by every major human empire proves its absolute, unwavering dominance. The Egyptians relied on it. The Greeks prescribed it. The Romans built with it. French farmers saved their entire economy with it. NASA took it to space. The EPA validated it in modern labs. And hospitals use it right now to save lives in the ICU. This knowledge was intentionally buried for one painfully simple reason. A permanent, $5 solution is the mortal enemy of a $2.2 billion corporate machine that requires your monthly financial loyalty. Your great-grandmother probably didn't know the scientific term oligodynamic, but she absolutely knew. Her copper tea kettle never grew a single spot of mold. She knew water poured from a copper pitcher always tasted perfectly crisp and clean. She knew her solid copper basement pipes never failed the way today's cheap plastic plumbing does. For thousands of years, this life-saving reality was handed down through families for absolutely free. Then, a few decades of aggressive corporate advertising convinced modern society to forget it entirely. If this revelation unlocked something for you, hit the subscribe button and share this message with everyone you know. Every single time you share this, you help preserve the exact truth a multi-billion-dollar industry paid desperately to hide. Every person who learns this secret is one less lifetime customer they get to exploit.